The American Civil War, a brutal conflict fought between 1861 and 1865, stemmed from deep-seated divisions within the United States. At the heart of this conflict lay the issue of slavery. The Southern states relied heavily on enslaved African Americans for their agricultural economy. They fiercely defended the institution of slavery. In contrast, the Northern states had largely abolished slavery and developed industrialized economies. Moral opposition to slavery grew in the North, further fueling tensions between the two regions. Adding fuel to the fire was the question of states' rights. The South advocated for greater autonomy for individual states. They argued for the right to govern themselves without federal interference, particularly on the issue of slavery. The North, however, favored a stronger federal government to maintain national unity and uphold the rights of all citizens, including enslaved people. These fundamental differences in values, economics, and political ideology created a chasm between North and South. By the mid-19th century, this chasm had grown too wide to ignore. The nation stood on the brink of a devastating conflict. The election of Abraham Lincoln, a staunch opponent of slavery, as president in 1860 proved to be the tipping point. Lincoln's victory sent shockwaves through the South. Fearing the end of their way of life, 11 Southern states seceded from the Union. They formed the Confederate States of America, setting the stage for the bloodiest conflict in American history. The war began on April 12, 1861, with the Confederate attack on Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. Federal troops stationed at Fort Sumter found themselves bombarded by Confederate forces. After a 34-hour bombardment, the Union garrison surrendered the fort. The Confederacy's audacious act of aggression ignited the war. Following the fall of Fort Sumter, both sides mobilized their armies. The Union, with a larger population and industrial base, had a distinct advantage in resources and manpower. The Confederacy, however, had a strong military tradition and the advantage of fighting on home ground. The South also believed in its cause, bolstering the morale of its soldiers. The first major battle of the war took place at Bull Run, Virginia, in July 1861. Confederate forces, led by General Thomas Stonewall Jackson, routed the Union Army, shattering any illusions of a quick and easy Union victory. Bull Run made it clear that the war would be a long and bloody affair. In the early years of the war, the Confederacy proved to be a formidable opponent. Confederate victories at Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville, both in Virginia, further emboldened the South. However, the tide began to turn in favor of the Union in 1863. The Battle of Antietam, fought in Maryland in September 1862, marked a turning point in the war. Although tactically a draw, Antietam proved to be a strategic victory for the Union. It halted General Robert E. Lee's first invasion of the North and provided President Lincoln with the opportunity to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation, issued on January 1, 1863, declared that all slaves held in Confederate territory were to be freed. This landmark decree transformed the war from a struggle to preserve the Union into a fight for human freedom. It also effectively prevented European powers from recognizing and supporting the Confederacy. The Battle of Gettysburg, fought in Pennsylvania in July 1863, was another pivotal moment in the war. The three-day battle, which resulted in heavy casualties on both sides, marked the Confederacy's last major offensive in the North. General George Meade's Union forces repelled Lee's army, dealing a severe blow to Confederate morale and resources. Gettysburg, along with the Union victory at Vicksburg, Mississippi, which gave the North control of the Mississippi River, marked the beginning of the end for the Confederacy. Section 4. Leaders and Legends Shaping the Course of War. The American Civil War was a clash not only of armies but also of ideologies and personalities. Towering figures emerged on both sides, leaving an indelible mark on the course of the war and the nation's history. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, stood as a beacon of hope and determination for the Union. Lincoln's unwavering commitment to preserving the Union, coupled with his eloquence and compassion, made him one of the most revered figures in American history. On the Confederate side, General Robert E. Lee earned widespread respect for his military genius and unwavering loyalty to his native South. Lee's strategic brilliance and tactical acumen made him a formidable adversary for Union forces. However, his cause, the preservation of slavery and the Confederacy, ultimately aligned with a morally indefensible institution. Ulysses S. Grant, a relatively unknown general at the start of the war, emerged as the Union's most capable military leader. Grant's relentless pursuit of victory, exemplified by his campaigns in the West and his eventual siege of Vicksburg, proved instrumental in the Union's triumph. His determination and strategic acumen earned him the nickname Unconditional Surrender Grant. Section 5. The Confederacy crumbles, Grant's relentless campaign. By 1864, the tide of the war had decisively turned in favor of the Union. General Ulysses S. Grant, now appointed General-in-Chief of all Union armies, devised a bold strategy to crush the Confederacy. Grant's plan involved a two-pronged offensive. General William T. Sherman would lead a campaign through the South, while Grant himself would confront Lee's army in Virginia. Sherman's March to the Sea, as it became known, cut a swath of destruction through Georgia, capturing Atlanta and Savannah. Sherman's scorched earth tactics, while controversial, aimed to break the South's will to fight by targeting not only military objectives but also civilian infrastructure. Meanwhile, Grant engaged Lee's Army of Northern Virginia in a series of bloody battles in Virginia, known as the Overland Campaign. Although costly in terms of casualties, Grant's relentless pressure gradually wore down Lee's forces. Grant's strategy of attrition, combined with Sherman's devastating campaign in the South, brought the Confederacy to its knees. As Union forces tightened their grip on the South, the Confederate government found itself increasingly isolated and depleted of resources. The Confederate cause, already morally bankrupt in the eyes of many, now seemed hopeless.